All right, types of consequences. So we had a question yesterday, is a reinforcer a consequence? Yes. These are the 6 types of consequences that you really need to be aware of when it comes to understanding the dynamics underlying problem behavior. So we are going to break these down, parse these out, and then we're going to do a bit of an activity. So you see here, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment. And then the outliers are kind of recovery after punishment and extinction. And this often throws people. Positive punishment, negative punishment? Punishment can be positive. You can have good punishment. And the key thing around the semantics here is that positive doesn't mean good. It's not a value judgment. Negative doesn't mean bad. In behavioral jargon, when we talk about positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment, we're using positive and negative as mathematical terms. It's additive or subtractive. You're adding a consequence or you're subtracting a consequence. Adding something to the environment or subtracting something from the environment. So it's not a value statement. If you said, I use positive punishment, it doesn't mean good for you. You used really a admirable type of punishment. It just means that you added something to the environment. Like if I yell at you, I've added yelling. Yelling is called positive punishment. That doesn't seem very positive. It's mathematical. I've added it. So let's break these down. Positive reinforcement, you see at the bottom, there's a procedure and a function. So the procedure of positive reinforcement is adding a stimulus after a behavior occurs. So if a child does something, a student does something desirable, you add something to the environment like praise, tickles, touch, edible, token, whatever it happens to be, access to the iPad, time outside on the playground, or time with a peer. All of those things are added contingent on doing a desired behavior. That's positive reinforcement. I've added it, and then over time, due to this consequence, whatever behavior preceded the consequence should increase. So here's some examples. The antecedent is an English demand, and Freddie cooperates, and then he gets to take a break. Over time, Freddie does English work more often. So ask yourself, in terms of consequence, was there an add, subtract, or something withheld? Well, the break was added, right? So we have an add. And over time, what's the effect on behavior? Because this is kind of your 2-part algorithm to determine is it positive or negative reinforcement. Was there an add or a takeaway? And if we're talking about discriminating between reinforcement and punishment, did it go up or down? That's it. So behavior went up, you have an increase, so you've got positive reinforcement. Mr. Jones asks Sam a question. Sam swears at Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones reprimands Sam for swearing. Over time, Sam swears more often when asked a question. So the behavior is increasing, so the consequence is reinforcing it. What was added here? The reprimand was added. And the effect on behavior is an increase. Now this is counterintuitive. So what we're concerned with behavior analytically is not what anyone's intent was, but what actually occurred is the type of consequence. So was Mr. Jones' intent that if I reprimand him for swearing, I want him to swear more? Not at all, right? His intent was actually that I'm going to deliver this punishing consequence so he'll swear less. It turns out that it backfired. Apparently the attention from the reprimand was reinforcing the swearing behavior. And that backfired on Mr. Jones. He didn't anticipate that. But it doesn't matter what his intent was, it would actually happen. So in this case, reprimands for problem behavior winds up being a positive reinforcer. Even though it's counterintuitive, the analysis shows that this is how it functioned. More positive reinforcement. Sam completes his work. Mr. Jones praises Sam for finishing his work, and Sam smiles at Mr. Jones. Now we're focusing on Mr. Jones's behavior in that box. Over time, Mr. Jones praises Sam and more often. So what was added that led to Mr. Jones praising more and more often? The student smiled at him, right? Students smiling at a teacher makes sense. It's kind of a reinforcer. And the behavior goes up over time. So a student's positive response, right, and now I'm using the word positive in terms of a value statement, his happy response to the praise functions as a reinforcer. And you can imagine this, if you're a teacher and you go around to your 30 students, and the student, when you praise them, if they look at you and they're just beaming and smiling, that feels good. I'm probably gonna go back and do that more with you. But if you're a student who just kind of gives a blank stare and goes back, probably I'm not gonna go and praise you as much as the other kid because there's more in it for me. I have a happier consequence if I go and praise that student. So that's positive reinforcement in a nutshell. You add a stimulus and behavior goes up. Negative reinforcement doesn't mean bad. I was in a staff room one time and a teacher walks in at the recess break and goes, "Oh, I've had it with Freddie. Right? He's just driving me nuts." So I just totally negative reinforced him. I yelled at him, he's in for recess, he can't go out. Man, I negatively reinforced that. He won't be doing that anytime soon. That's a complete misuse of negative reinforcement, because if you reinforce something, it goes up. But his intent was he won't do that anymore. What he meant to say was, I totally positively punished him and negatively punished him. I yelled at him and I took away his privileges. I used 2 types of punishment with him. But he's not thinking of punishment that way. Punishment is like hitting somebody, right? And we don't do that. So he's focusing on the negative, thinking I negatively reinforced that. Incorrect use. And by the way, negative reinforcement is probably one of the top 2 misunderstood and misused terms in the broad field of psychology, because people see negative and they think of value statement. So what it means is, after a behavior occurs, you take something away, and then behavior increases over time or maintains. So my go-to example is how I start every morning of my life. My alarm goes off. That's an aversive stimulus, because I was sleeping happily, and now there's something interrupting it. There's this annoying thing in the environment, and I reach over and I press snooze, and it goes away, and I'm more likely to press snooze in the future, right? Because there is something in the environment contingent on my pressing the button. That's the behavior. Snooze, sound goes away, removed, behavior goes up. I keep doing this. That's negative reinforcement, okay? If the music's too loud in your car and you turn it down, turning it down was maintained by negative reinforcement. If someone's talking behind you in the movie theater and you turn around and shush them and they stop, that's maintained by negative reinforcement. There's something that went away contingent on your behavior, and therefore you're more likely to do it. So Mr. Jones gives Sam work to do. Sam has a tantrum. That's not a good typography word. Sam is sent out of the classroom. Over time, Sam tantrums more often when he's given work to do, because he's no dummy. The work was subtracted. If you give me work and I tantrum, you remove the work. You subtract it from my life. And I like that, so I'm going to keep doing it. Right? And the teacher might be thinking, sending out of the, again, is this a matter of intent? The teacher didn't have this intent. If I send you out of the classroom, you'll stop messing around with your work, having tantrums when there's work, right? Totally backfired. You gave him exactly what he wanted. I always think of when I worked as an SEA in a grade 1 classroom, there's this one kid, Jonathan, and Jonathan was always getting in trouble with Miss S, and Miss S would send him out because she just had low tolerance for misbehavior. And so she was a lot happier when Jonathan went out, and she's using this as a punishment procedure. She's thinking, right? And then one day I happened to go out of the classroom after he'd been sent out, and he's sitting on the bench outside class where she sent him, but he has a direct line of sight into the classroom across the hallway where his best friend is sitting by the door. And the 2 of them have developed a code where they're talking about picking teams for baseball at recess. And it turns out he'd been doing this every day. He's strategically timed when he would be bad so he could be sent out so that he could have this covert conversation with his friend, and they were both getting off on it, right? And the teacher thought she was doing the right thing, but she was actually strengthening it, because when he left, he didn't have to do the work and he got to go hang out with his friend, right? Totally backfiring. So it doesn't matter what the intent is, it matters what's actually happening. Negative reinforcement, Sam tantrums. Mr. Jones sends Sam out of the classroom and the tantrum stops. So over time, Mr. Jones sends Sam out of the classroom more often. So who's in the behavior box here? Mr. Jones. Why does Mr. Jones keep sending bad kids out of his class? Because he subtracts their annoyance from his classroom. He subtracts their disruption from his classroom, and that's better for him, right? That makes sense. So you're stuck in this cycle, right? Where arguably both parties are being negatively reinforced, and it's just going to continue. But we can appreciate that. This is why parents give in at the grocery store. Mommy, I want the chocolate. I want the chocolate. I want the chocolate. Oh, you just have the chocolate and be quiet, right? I've subtracted the whining and begging by giving you the food that you're looking for, and this works for me, so I can continue to do it. And now you've inadvertently shaped a bad behavior that's inevitably going to lead to a meltdown in the grocery store, right? So Sam escapes work. Mr. Jones escapes Sam disruption. You have what our colleague, Dr. Joe Lucician at UBC, refers to as a mutually coercive cycle. Both parties are stuck in this dance, and it's working for both of them. The student doesn't have to do what the student doesn't want to do. The teacher doesn't have to deal with a disruptive student. And what's the problem with this? No new learning is occurring. The student is being excluded from learn units for whatever is happening in the classroom, right? It's over time, cumulatively, this is going to be a problem, even though it's kind of a relief for both in the moment. More negative reinforcement. Mr. Jones gives Sam a worksheet. Sam completes one problem without assistance. Mr. Jones takes the worksheet away. And Sam completes one problem without assistance more often. He kind of surprised him. Here's 30 questions, get to work. He does the first one. Mr. Jones comes over and says, good job, you don't have to do anymore. The kid's thinking, this is great, right? as opposed to needing to engage in problem behavior to get out of this. So Mr. Jones is using negative reinforcement to start shaping appropriate learning behavior, cooperative student behavior, right? By surprising him and removing the response effort, removing the demand load contingent on doing some of it. And this is a good strategy. If students are having a hard time, lots of problem behavior that's maintained by escape, is just to take away all those things that trigger it and then slowly reintroduce them and have baby steps and a plan to get back to where you were. Right? And you may say, well, that's kind of laborious. Why can't he just do it? And I agree. He should just do it. But the reality is he's not doing it. And so you risk getting stuck in this cycle. It's better to break the cycle and start shaping, making these small compromises and working back towards the ideal. So there's a subtract of the work was taken away, and he's more likely to do his work because of that. So that's negative reinforcement. Positive punishments. Something is added after the behavior occurs, like a reprimand or a spanking, and there's a decrease over time. And by the way, when I say spanking, I'm using this as an illustrative example. I'm never endorsing the use of spanking as a strategy. So Mr. Jones asks Sam a question. Teacher asks a question. Sam ignores Mr. Jones, so Mr. Jones repeats the question, repeats the question, repeats the question, repeats the question. He's employing the broken record strategy, where I'm going to stand here and look at you and repeat the question, and the only way out of this is by answering the question. Right? And it creates kind of an uncomfortable classroom setting until eventually, okay, I'll answer so you'll move on and leave me alone. Right? That would be an example of positive punishment by a broken record strategy. So what was added? Right? If you don't answer, I'm just going to keep asking you. Right? And of course, it would only be appropriate to do this if you know he's capable of producing the answer. If he's not capable of producing the answer, then it's unfair. Right? It's not a clean learn unit. He needs a prompt. And there's a decrease. He's learned I can't ignore Mr. Jones, because if I don't answer him, he's just going to embarrass me and stand there and keep asking until I respond in some way. So I'm not going to do that with him anymore. Sam completes his work. Mr. Jones praises Sam. Sam spits at Mr. Jones. Over time, Mr. Jones praises Sam less and less. Again, intent. Mr. Jones thought he was doing something altruistic. He thought he was being a good teacher. He was giving praise for a job well done because he did complete his work. For some reason, Sam didn't like that, so he spat at him. Maybe he didn't like the attention. We don't know, but we're just looking at what we see. We're not making mentalistic inferences here. So he spits at him. So that was added. Before I praised you, I didn't have spit on my face. After praising you, I'm tasting your spit. So I'm going to stop praising you if that's what's going to happen when I praise you. Right? Again, it can be counterintuitive, but we're being analysts here. We're just looking at what happened. Miss Kim asks a question. Anne puts up hand and answers. Miss Kim cheers and claps for Anne. Over time, Anne answers questions less frequently. Again, counterintuitive. The teacher was so happy that Anne finally put up her hand that she gave her all this enthusiastic praise for doing so. But apparently Anne didn't like that, and it didn't function the way the teacher intended. She intended this to be positive reinforcement, but it wound up being a positive punisher. So the praise was added, and there's a decrease. I have some friends who are ELL students early in their careers, people who immigrated here from other places, and a few of them have told me stories about being in kindergarten or grade 1 in Canada. They're learning the language. Because they don't have good English skills, they don't talk a lot, and they're known as the quiet kid. And they all have these stories of, well, I can remember the first time that I spoke in class. I said something like, pass scissors? And everyone went, oh, yay, she said pass the scissors! And the whole class stopped and watched passing the scissors. And it embarrassed the student. And they didn't want all this attention. They just took a risk and used English in class for the first time, said pass scissors. And everyone had the best of intentions. They were so happy to hear their classmates speaking in English. And so they gave a little party, and it turned out that party was a massive punisher. And the student didn't speak for months after that because they didn't want to risk people freaking out over asking for scissors again, right? So it's not about our intent. Negative punishments. So here, the procedure is, if a behavior occurs and you want to see it reduced, you remove something contingent on that behavior, and you hope to see a reduction in the future. So for example, teenager goes out with the family car, supposed to be back by 11, doesn't show up till 1 o'clock in the morning. Right? Contingent on that late behavior, you might say, you've lost your car privileges for the next month. Right? That's a takeaway. And then if they stop breaking curfew, if that behavior is suppressed, then that was a negative punisher. Okay? So Mr. Jones asks Sam a question. Sam tantrums. Mr. Jones removes a preferred task. Over time, Sam tantrums less and less when asked a question. So that kind of makes sense. This was done with intent, and it worked the way that the teacher, Mr. Jones, hoped that it would work. Right? He subtracted a preferred activity contingent on misbehavior, and over time that misbehavior occurred less often. This would be arguably a correct, with intent, appropriate and defensible way of using negative punishment in a classroom scenario. Parents could do this as well. If you've broken this rule, you've lost access to the iPad. You don't get to go outside after dinner, right? They've lost some type of privilege. Always assuming that, punishment fits the crime. And the student understands, makes the connection. Anne is at lunch. Anne throws food at lunch. Anne doesn't get to eat her dessert. If she hadn't thrown, she would have had her dessert. So over time, Anne throws food less and less often. Apparently, she wanted her dessert. So the loss of dessert means I had access to it, but contingent on my throwing of food, it was subtracted and taken away. I don't get to eat my dessert. And over time, there's a decrease. This would look like, again, an intentful, appropriate, defensible use of negative punishment during the lunchtime routine. Okay, so those are the big four. You've got positive and negative reinforcement, positive and negative punishment, and both are at interplay with all of our behavior at all times, and our students, and every living organism. Now we're going to deal with what I referred to as the outliers: recovery after punishment, RAP, and extinction. So recovery after punishment requires, as a prereq, that there's been a history of punishment. Okay? The punishment has been happening, and then something's going to happen here. So in the past, when Sam ignored Mr. Jones would repeat the question. Sam would answer. Do you remember that scenario, the broken record? If I've asked you the capital of France and you don't answer, but I know you know, I'm just going to stay here at the capital of France is. Class, we're waiting. Sam, what's the capital of France? What's the capital of France? And finally he gives in, right? Because he doesn't want to continue to be embarrassed. And so he's learned that I have to answer Mr. Jones' questions. But now Mr. Jones asks a question in class. Sam goes back to his old ways and he ignores, kind of back to baseline. And then in this instance, Mr. Jones didn't follow through with his previously effective punishment procedure. He didn't stand there and be a broken record. And if he doesn't do that, if he removes a punisher that had previously been effective, then over time, Sam ignores Mr. Jones more and more often. Because think about the learning that's occurred here. He learned that ignoring Mr. Jones doesn't work because he'll embarrass me. But then when he stopped embarrassing me, I can get away with ignoring him again, so I'll go back to baseline. So you have a withholding of a previously delivered punisher, and the behavior goes back up, right? It's like if you ground a child for doing this, that, or the other thing, and whatever the problem was gets better, then over time you just stop grounding them, and then the problems start to creep back in. That's recovery after punishment. In the past, when Anne hit teacher, she was given a timeout because you can't hit the teacher. Over time, so that's a negative punishment, right? She had free time, but then contingent on hitting it was removed. That's negative. Behavior went down. You got negative punishment. Over time, Anne hit the teacher less often. So you've got this effective history of punishment. But now, teacher says hi to Anne, or whatever the interaction is. Anne goes back to baseline. She hits the teacher, but she now doesn't get a timeout. The rules have changed again. So over time, she hits the teacher more and more often because what was preventing me is no longer being delivered. So we're back to baseline. So you have withholding of a previously available punisher, and behavior starts to rise back up. And again, this is another one of the problems with a straight-up punishment approach, a reactive putting out the fire approach, is if you use punishment, you're now locked into needing to use it all the time. Because the moment you stop using it, you risk recovery after punishment. I can't understand why it's come back. Well, it's because you've changed your tactic, and that's recovery after punishment.